The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Greetings and welcome back to the Personal Safety Show. This is Marcus Melnick from Stress to Logic and Firearm Mentor, your host. And we were talking about emergency preparedness, specifically for hurricanes, but not necessarily. I teased in the last section how to waterproof your stuff. You can buy ammunition cans, or you can pull out your dishwasher, which is waterproof, empty out the trays in it, store your valuables inside of the dishwasher, and then secure it with a rope or duct tape or whatever if you have to leave your home, because you can't always bring every valuable you have or every memento that you have with you. With that said, there are public safety answering points. These are your 911 centers. They could be overloaded with requests for service, which leaves you as the citizen on your own. I regret to inform everyone that there is Supreme Court case law. Warren versus District of Columbia is basically the police do not owe a specific duty to provide police services to citizens based on the public duty doctrine. This has been affirmed and reaffirmed by several courts, including DeShaney versus Winnebago and Town of Castle Rock versus Gonzalez, where the Supreme Court ruled that police agencies are not obligated to provide protection of citizens. In other words, the police are well within their rights to pick and choose when to intervene to help save property and lives of others, even when there is an apparent threat. I'm going to give you an example. Hurricane Katrina, the people who stayed in New Orleans, they may not have gotten a police response. In fact, the police went around and collected guns. Look, you need to be self-sufficient. That means you need to have a smoke detector. That means you have to have a fire extinguisher. That means that you have to be able to survive on your own. Firearms are a completely different topic, and I'll touch on it here. I would say that if you are able to use and legally own a firearm, it's not a bad idea to have one and learn how to use it. Oh my God, I could never hurt someone. I get that, but what if you got to shoot a squirrel or a coyote or something to survive? There are survival rifles that you can get and survival pistols that you can get. You can even do survival with a pellet gun, an air gun. You'd only be hitting small game for hunting, but at the same time, it would allow you the opportunity. So even if you don't want a gun in your house, you can get a pellet gun, which is not technically a firearm according to Illinois law. A lot of firearm owners know that the police don't necessarily protect you. They triage their calls. They try to save as many people as they possibly can. But then at the same time, if there are downed trees, how are the police and how are the fire department going to get to you? These are practical considerations that a lot of regular people don't even take in. Oh, the police will get me. Yeah, but if there's a huge tree down, or there's a train that's derailed and the train is between you and emergency services, you're not getting help. At least you're not getting it right away. So what should we have for our first aid kits? Well, we need an absorbent compress, adhesive bandages, that means Band-Aids, adhesive tape, at least 25 yards or a roll, antibiotic treatment, that's your triple antibiotic, your Neosporin, antiseptic, which could be alcohol packets, burn treatment, a first aid guide, medical exam gloves, triangular bandages, sterile pads, and an analgesic, which should contain no ingredients known to cause drowsiness, feminine products, burn dressings, cold packs, eye coverings, eye and skin wash, hand sanitizer, roller bandages, and emergency eye wash, which I just said. CPR training, trauma wound training, these are all preparations that we can have so that during an emergency, we know exactly what to do. And let me give you an example of when this came into effect for me. A couple stories. I used to have a softball team. I started my own softball team right after I moved, and we had a guy in outfield, and we were using, it was Park District, the balls were 12-inch white, and we were playing at night. and one of the balls got hit as a pop fly into the outfield, and my outfielders lost the ball in the lights. In other words, the ball was in the exact same path as the lights from the overhead illumination. So he loses the ball and ends up smacking him on the bridge of his nose. Boom, he goes down. The other outfielder completes the... Now, we didn't know why he went down. We didn't actually see him get struck with the ball. We thought maybe he missed and he fell over like he was mad at himself. But then the other outfielder came in, scooped up the ball and said, "Oh, we got a bleeder." And I had my first aid kit. I ran out. I packaged him up. I had someone else with a piece of paper write down his name, allergies to medications. This is all before the paramedics showed up. And he was all bandaged up and sent on his way to the hospital. Now, he had his nose broken. It was reset. And the positive outcome, it's not going to sound positive, but the positive outcome was he didn't know he had super high blood pressure. And that little incident sending him to the hospital diagnosed him with high blood pressure, and he was able to get on a medication to reduce his risk of heart attack. So there was a positive out there. Another time we were moving, and there's this big metal aluminum ramp that they take off the back of the truck, and one guy sliced off the index finger where his fingerprint would be, and a lot of it was sliced off. So I immediately got my first aid kit, packaged him. By the time the paramedics got there, same thing. He went to the hospital. And a couple years later, he was helping, same moving crew was helping my sister move. I asked him to see his finger. Ooh, it looked like half the thickness of a regular finger. It never grew back. But he was okay. He could still work. It just was kind of weird to see. Family safety and security are of utmost importance. There's a multitude of scenarios that require safety equipment. And the most recent example was the PPE with our masks, our gloves, our eye protection, all that good stuff. So these common items you can put in your emergency pack. More seriously, you could get gas masks. Now, here's the deal. You can get these surplus gas masks. The reason why they're surplus gas masks is because their seals don't work. Don't buy surplus gas masks for an emergency. The real good ones are close to $1,000. You can get them from fire department supply companies. These old ones have broken seals, non-working canisters or filters. The lenses are scratched, and it's unknown if they were worn or issued, so you want to go new. Also, rubber degrades depending on storage methods, so there's no way to know how these surplus masks were stored. A new purchase is always recommended. Widespread fires might require people to be their own fire department. Fire extinguishers should be in areas where there are independent heat sources, like your kitchen, your laundry room, potentially your garage, or other places. When preparing for fires, smoke and carbon monoxide detectors need to be tested when daylight savings times comes along. And there are these things called smoke hoods. They're not quite gas masks, but they allow you to put them on and escape out of a building that is filled with smoke. Remember, we're not just talking about weather emergencies, although lightning strike could start a fire. We're talking about all sorts of emergencies. As far as firearms, if you are a firearms person, and I am a firearms person, it is important to have the correct tools or guns on hand for self-defense and possibly hunting. Each person's different. It's recommended to have a handgun at least in what I call a law enforcement caliber. That means 9mm, 40 Smith & Wesson, 45 ACP, 38 caliber, 357 Magnum, even a 380. 3 long guns are also recommended, which include a shotgun, a 22 LR rifle, and a military caliber carbine rifle, such as 223, 556, 762, or other hunting caliber. Now, hey look, there is the PICA Act, Protect Illinois Communities Act, or the PU Act. Did you know that there are a couple of firearms that are considered to be military caliber that are not covered under this law? So if you are interested in that, you can always reach out to me with my electronic business card, which is marcusmelnick.com, marcusmelnick.com, and I can certainly guide you in the right direction. Hunting is mentioned because normal food sources may be unavailable. In most areas, it's small game, and it might be disgusting to eat squirrel, raccoon, possum, rabbits, deer, or fowl. It may become necessary. What do you do if the neighbor knocks on your door and says, "I need your help"? Do you help him? or her? Or do you say, sorry, I don't have enough resources? That's up to you. There are these Biofang radios. They're $25. You can get them. You can also get an FCC license for $70 for 10 years. I did this during the pandemic. I was influenced by other people. I've never used it, but I have it. If you have to leave, this has occurred several times in the last 40 years in various regions. For example, following the eruption of Mount St. Helens, Hurricane Katrina, tons of other storms, wildfires, earthquakes. These all required people to leave. My cousin, his family had to evacuate their home on 2 occasions due to wildfires in California. He said each time we knew it was coming, so we had to place the cars facing the street. We took photos, RX meds, and computers and loaded into the vehicles. And in 2018, he sent his children and pets to his in-laws' home, which was about 90 minutes away before they got the evacuation order. Again, in 2018, the local nightly news showed a house burning 1.5 miles from Kaz's. He and his wife Robin grabbed their children and their dogs and they left. Evacuation should be organized, phased, planned, supervised, and should have removal of citizens from dangerous or potentially dangerous situations. You got 2 options. Destination and time allowed for evacuation will dictate what supplies you should bring. If you are evacuating to a hotel, a summer home, or a friend or family's members or house, survival and camping equipment is probably not needed. However, evacuation to camp or outdoor forest area or even an unknown location requires survival equipment like shelter, blankets, fire starting. One decision-making tool to leave ahead of an evacuation hour is REDOUT, which is an acronym for resources, environment is unsafe, destination, overwhelming force, unprepared, or threat has increased. Only one condition needs to be met for someone to bug out. So let's go through each of these. As far as resources, bug out, or part of the bug out and urban survival process should be to map nearby resources and en route to the bug out location. Preppers are going to need to know what is accessible in times of need. These resources should include natural ones like rivers and streams, as well as retail locations and other resource hubs. There may come a time where resources are running short or running out altogether. Remember, the more accessible and popular a resource location is, the more likely it will be picked clean and possibly occupied by hostile people. If resources at home and in the surrounding area are running out, then it's legitimately time to consider leaving. When the environment is unsafe, what has the disaster done to your home and the surrounding area? An unsafe environment could mean things like gas leaks, radiation, flooding. An unsafe environment can also mean that other people or elements have made it unsafe as well. If lives are at risk by staying, the time has come to bug out. Where are you going to go? Well, for many, the idea of a bug out starts and stops with the back. Some people don't have a chosen area. If they're lucky enough to have a planned location, it comes down to which is a better position, current or new. Are you better off at home, which is likely the safest place, or are you better off at the new destination? Your bug out location might be stocked with goodies and hidden from the world, or your bug out location might be a quiet spot in the woods. The condition of your destination will dictate how the bug out goes, so your intelligence gathering should be understanding the area around it and if it has any threats. Overwhelming force. You could very well face a time when a hostile force takes power in your area, like criminal gangs, like civil unrest. Following a serious collapse, this could even be the government. Not likely, but it could happen. If you're faced with overwhelming force, you have 2 options, kneel or evade. The ability to recognize overwhelming force from a distance will dictate your success. This is where survival intelligence will come into play. Recognizing an overwhelming force when it arrives at your front door is too late. If you hear word that a powerful gang is taking control of your town or city and they are ruling by force, then it's a clear sign that you need to get out of there, especially if they're eating cats and dogs. All right, guys, that was a joke. I'm just kidding. Relax. If you are unprepared, and it's very hard to admit for preppers that we might be unprepared for something. The truth of the matter is, we can't be prepared for everything. If an asteroid lands on your house, you can't prepare for that. If you live 20 miles south of Yellowstone and it blows, like volcano blows, You cannot prepare for that. And if North Korea gets crazy and lucky with a missile that lands in your town, it's hard to prepare. There could be a time or situation you're unprepared for, but be prepared to recognize the fact that you are unprepared for this particular situation, and this will give you a clear head to consider what comes next. In most cases, it means bug out. During or following a disaster, you could find that you are getting along just fine with your preps, and the safety of your home may be all you need. For millions of Americans, this is the case after storms and other disasters. Sometimes, however, the threat from the disaster can increase. After a serious disaster, things can get worse pretty quickly. Look at Puerto Rico. While some may have been capable of surviving the situation after a recent hurricane, once the hordes of desperate people showed up, it's a different story. If the threat is from the environment, people, or something else increases, that must be taken into account. And if you can't deal with the increased threat, it's time to bug out. How do you choose a bug out location? Well, location is the most critical factor to consider. It's a balancing act. So distance. Your location should be far enough away from your city that mass exodus and congestion is not an issue. Yet it should be close enough that driving for many hours or days is not necessary to get there. When it comes to distance, a mode of transportation is necessary consideration. Keep your gas tanks at least half full in all times. Wintertime, if you're going to have a winter storm approach, fill your gas tank. Guess what? November 3rd, fill your gas tank. Why am I saying that? Because there might be some civil unrest after the election. There might be an interruption of services that are delivered. Look at the longshoreman strike, which came to an end, but will probably happen again after the first of the year. Next, when you're choosing a location, choose a location that is secluded and not easily visible from travel routes. It should be difficult to find off of the main roads with good tree cover. There should be enough concealment that anyone walking along the roads, paths, or even railroad tracks in the vicinity will not be able to see the camp day or night. This means lights should not be visible. There should be at least 3 different routes planned to arrive at the hideaway safely. Main routes can include major roadways, which can be used if evacuation is early or quickly enough, and these are still accessible, but backup routes will take you off the main roads are also necessary in the evacuation plan. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. I live in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. I don't have an easterly bug out location. I have a northerly one, I have a westerly one, and I have a southern one. And I can get to all 3 of these areas relatively easily. So you don't say, well, I'm just going to go to Uncle Johnny's house who lives north, when that might be the area that's also affected. I want my listeners to know that this is my dream, teaching people about safety. If it weren't for you, if it weren't for my listeners, I couldn't live my dream. So on behalf of my family and myself, I want to thank each and every one of you for allowing me to live my dream. And I also want to continue to live my dream, and I'm excited to continue to spread the word of safety. Recently, I began a new service as a conference keynote speaker. So if anyone would like for me to speak at future events, or if anyone knows of an introduction or would like to discuss how we can work with one another, I'd love to do just that. The keynote speaking website is www.stress2logic.com. That is STRESS2logic.com. If you're aware of any conference speaking engagements where you'd like to have me speak, I'd love an introduction. You can always share my electronic business card, which is Marcus Melnick, MarcusMelnick.com. Now, back to the show. Shelter. If a remote property can be purchased that has a house or a cabin or a shack or something on it, that's great. The decision will need to be made to live in a tent or a trailer, and if you can get one on your property indefinitely, or building a permanent structure. These are important considerations, especially if living in a climate that experiences winter. Also keep in mind that it may take more than a day to get to the bug out property. Preppers should be prepared for camping regardless of the season. ensuring that the bug out kit has shelter, warm clothes, and a sleeping bag if it is closed. I have my supplies in a couple of duffel bags as well as a huge plastic bin, and I just know I gotta grab a few things. Living at a bug out location may be necessary for an extended amount of time. Going to a store every time the pantry is empty is not an option, or might not be an option, and the electrical grid might not work. All preps must be on the property, must be able to produce what is needed. That means aside from water, which discussed previously, you might need to have a food garden, fish and game, a source of electricity, whether it's solar, wind, water, generator, a source of firewood, and space and resources for livestock, if that is in your wheelhouse. Another location worth considering is ghost towns or empty buildings. Empty buildings will be called ghost towns for the ease of just a conversation. I'm not advocating breaking trespass laws, but less serious infractions in an emergency are likely not to be enforced. Ghost towns, especially those that have been long abandoned and not restored as tourist attractions, would likely be isolated, and it would at least have some structures that could be used for temporary shelter. If choosing this option, identify ghost towns of choice and visit in advance of a disaster. This could be a strip mall, this could be an office building. You might have to break something to get in. In many cases, people quickly abandon their workplaces and go home to protect their families. If stuck in an urban or suburban location without a pre-planned bug-out location, look for an abandoned office building as a temporary shelter. Many office buildings may even have working generators and other supplies, depending on what type of crisis has hit and how severe it is. It's not advisable unless the rule of law has gone out the window or the situation is very dire because it's considered trespassing and could have legal consequences. For added security, identify several office buildings with at least 2 floors and a basement. This gives you the flexibility depending on the type of disaster that hits. For a tornado, you'd hunker down in the basement, but for a flood, you might want to go to higher ground. In addition, if it is an urban area, it's likely that looters might be dashing in and out of the ground floors, grabbing whatever they see. Stop the elevator if it works, black out the windows, barricade the stairs. Another place to consider are power line easements, train track easements, or abandoned logging roads for temporary camping. These areas typically are not heavily populated. The logging roads or easements maintained so you can further get into the wooded areas away from prying eyes of people. Caution is always warranted because trespassing runs the risk of being shot by an owner monitoring their property line. The Red Cross and National Guard could be available to help, but their deployment often takes time. Displaced disaster victims may be moved to a camp or a FEMA shelter. So FEMA is a great resource. They have free training. You can go on the FEMA website and you can do training on how to actually react to a disaster. So let me finalize this by going over what should be in your bug-in checklist. And that means to stay at home. You should have, as far as food goes, frozen and canned meats. That could be tuna fish. Canned vegetables, nut butters and nuts, nutrition or granola bars, dehydrated camping foods, instant coffee, sugar, powdered creamer, bottled water, crackers, oatmeal, pasta and rice, potatoes, apples, dried fruit, onions, water, M&Ms, and Velveeta. Why is M&Ms and Velveeta on this list? Well, interestingly enough, they were both developed in World War II. Velveeta was developed so that Allied soldiers could eat cheese without it needing to be refrigerated. And they can eat M&Ms without risk of chocolate being melted. This was specifically a World War II invention. Some sundries you should have are going to be laundry detergent and fabric softener, dish detergent, and paper products like paper towels, paper plates, toilet paper. As far as cooking supplies, you're going to need wooden matches, lighters, fat wood, a fire starter, charcoal, firewood, a camping cooking kettle. You can use your gas grill. As far as toiletries and medications, painkillers. So that's your Tylenol, Advil, Aleve, antacids, baby shampoo, soap, and conditioner. Why am I saying baby shampoo? Well, it's an old hazmat trick. You can use baby shampoo on your face, in your eyes. It's not going to burn your eyes. As far as safety goes, you're going to need a first aid kit, including specialized items, a fire extinguisher if this is you, firearms and ammunition, personal protective equipment like masks and gloves, warm clothing and blankets, flashlights and batteries, chem lights or snap lights like we talked about previously, candles, a bug-out paper map. I'd highly recommend laminating it to go to a hotel, a camp, family members, and the EFFAK. As far as bugging out, you're going to want that EFFAK, firearms and ammunition, sheath knives, water, non-perishable food, hand warmers, paracord and picture wire for trapping food sources, a manual can opener, fire starters, matches, or cotton balls soaked in Vaseline. It's kind of like a candle. If you have cotton balls soaked in Vaseline or even dryer lint, you have a little baggie of dryer lint, it starts fires quick. Bic lighters, a whistle, compass, batteries, a metal water bottle, single-walled metal water bottle, because that way you can put it on a fire and it's not going to degrade, and you can heat up water. A compass, sporks, welding gloves for use with fire, and outdoor work gloves, winter gloves, hats, rain ponchos, sunscreen and bug spray, mylar blankets, axes, a bow saw, a map book of U.S. highways, skivvy bags for each person, that means socks and underwear, camping equipment, fishing equipment, tarps, tents, and sleeping mats, life straws, those are the thick straws that you can basically drink dirty water through, a cooking kettle, a wrist rocket, bow or arrow, crossbow, and fishing rod and tackle. Look, as long as nothing happens, preppers are idiots. The day after an incident occurs, preppers are considered geniuses. Start prepping now. Even if personal funds are not currently available, many prepping activities involve mindset changes and organizing and gathering items that are already on hand. Prepping is not an overnight activity and can be done slowly. Godspeed, and may you never have to use the skills listed in this show. We have monthly concealed carry license CCL classes in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. Dates can be seen at firearmmentor.com/classes. If you have a question, we can be reached at www.firearmmentorcard.com. That is our electronic business card, has all of our contact information and links in it. It's the easiest way to get a hold of us. Until next time, stay safe out there, and I'll see you at the shooting range. This is Marcus Melnick from Firearm Mentor signing off. The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.